So you allow him to mix and not fix. You're the fixer.
That's the goal. Yeah. Sometimes he'd pass it back off to me. Sometimes he fixes it himself. Like he's an incredibly talented engineer. He doesn't offload things because he can't do it. He offloads things because, you know, if he wanted to kick a sample of a kick drum, he had it there.
Yeah.
If he wanted a completely different take on a kick drum, okay, well, sampling the sample is a lot faster and easier than sampling the...
Working with Yosh, to kind of segue into that, because I know that sounds like probably people listening and watching are like, yo, that's just like, that would be like the dream. You know, just sit down and be an assistant to like a Yosh or what have you. But what were you doing
what's
in
the
those?
Work?
Yeah, what's the work? What was those early years like?
Yeah, I handled all the intake of files and all the output of deliverables. And that also included, you know, especially as the years progressed and I learned more and more what he wants and what's going to work for him and what's going to slow him down, like get rid of those things before it gets to him. So yeah, I would intake the files, I'd open up the session. A lot of that's just, you know, set up, like make sure everything's the right colors and the right layout and like a template is imported and all that kind of stuff. Cleaning up vocals, cleaning up background vocals, bouncing down vocals. If we get a huge bunch of background vocals, like he doesn't need all that. So, you know, when he would get a session, then we have sopranos, altos, and tenors. He doesn't have to look at how many and how they were recorded and like all that kind of stuff. Like, give me something that's A, usable, and B, that's like cleaned up and balanced and even and like, he's not getting, you know, a bounce of sopranos from me that has one girl sticking out on the right side, right? Like, so you got to kind of go through and clean all that up and fix it and make it the least amount of friction as possible so that he can be creative and not be fixing issues. So you allow him to mix and not fix. You're the fixer. That's the goal. Yeah. Obviously, he's, you know, once you get into things, there's more things to fix. Sometimes he'd pass it back off to me. Sometimes he fixes it himself. Like he's an incredibly talented engineer. He doesn't offload things because he can't do it. He offloads things because it keeps you in a creative space.
Exactly.
It's helpful. It keeps you in the flow. It keeps you moving. Yeah. So
that's important.
He doesn't need to think about that stuff. He didn't need to think about hard drive management. He didn't need to think about where things were. And what he was going to do that day. He, you know, I mean, obviously we talked about the schedule. It's not like I managed his schedule, but like when he got into the studio, he'd have something to work on. So that he could open it up and it would be familiar and be ready to roll. You know, if he wanted to kick a sample of a kick drum, he had it there. Yeah. If he wanted a completely different take on a kick drum, okay, well, sampling the sample is a lot faster and easier than sampling the live one. So he can always sample off a sample that I already fixed. Toms are cleaned up. There's no plosives and lip smacks and all that kind of stuff. So and as you progress, you kind of know, okay, well, I'll get him started with this and get him started with this. And the less he has to be like, oh, let me put that same EQ I put on this thing every single time, the better, right?
Listen, I hope you are enjoying this conversation with Jon Blass. I got something really quick that I want to show you though. Check this out.
Hey, this is Jon Blass. You may have seen that I just announced my Gospel Producers Mixing class. My intent here is to let you into my thought process, my insights, how and why I do what I do every day to create the best art that I possibly can for clients that I respect so much. I get to work with some really incredible artists, and this is how I think about mixing and music and art and how I get to the finish line with these records. Click the link in my bio or scan the QR code to gain access to this class.
That aspect of engineering that I think people don't talk about a lot, because you're just getting into having an assistant and your own mix assistant and you're following that same track. And I think that's the thing that people don't think about or don't talk about, the importance of having a mix assistant and getting out of Yosh's role, you know, being an assistant as Yosh and now being the engineer and the head engineer, and you got a mix assistant. Can you kind of speak to that, the importance of that and how that, as an engineer, like how important that is?
Sure. It's still something I'm working on and trying to figure out how it works for me and how
how does the assistant have an assistant now? Like how do you transition from being that, you know, Because I'm pretty sure you were independent for a while, and then just you finally hired an assistant. How do you let go of the reins?
Yeah, well, and the way I structured is a little different than my arrangement with Yosh. I don't have Jesse in here with me all day, every day. He has other work outside of me as well. We do a lot of work remotely. He comes in a lot when I'm not here. And also, I want to be spending time with him and helping grow the process. And so there's some there's some learning experience for me. It's not I'm not following a pattern exactly. I'm trying to figure out how do I do this in the way that fits my situation and how I work and how I'm handling this, and learning from my experience with Yosh and learning from my experience of doing it without an assistant and all of that stuff. Like how do we make this the best it can be? And so that's a process we're still in, but Jesse is a phenomenal assistant. He's easy to work with. He handles things really well and efficiently, and when I open up a session, I know it's ready for me, and when I'm done with a mix and it's approved, I don't think about it anymore. I flip it over to this one's approved, and he comes in and prints the deliverables and sends them. And then
you're on to the next thing.
And I'm on to the next thing, yeah. So where's my time best spent? It's not spent in printing stems, it's spent in mixing. So if he can come in the evening and print stems, great. And we automate a lot of that too. So he doesn't, he was here the other night and set it all up to print and then left. And when I got back in the morning, it was still printing. So that's a lot of time that thankfully we're saving. And we're constantly trying to streamline how we do that and how we set up sessions to make that easier, better, faster, to better care for the clients.
Listen, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for watching this video. This is an excerpt from a 2-hour plus interview that we did with Jon Blass as a part of his Art of Mixing Gospel Masterclass. You can get access to the full 2-hour interview plus an additional 3 hours of content on mixing from one of the industry's best mixing engineers. So if you're interested, check out the link below or scan the QR code right here. And if you're not interested in those, then check this video out right here.